right, folks, let's dive right into this one, because you're not going to believe where this story goes. But before we start, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or town in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories reach. All right, y'all, buckle up because this is one of those you can't make this stuff up stories. I'm still fuming as I type this, and honestly, I have no idea how my family thinks any of this is okay. So, here we go. For context, I, 26F, live in a small town in Ohio. I work as a medical assistant, which means my schedule is packed, and I rely on my car for literally everything. It's a 2015 Honda Civic, not super fancy, but it's mine, and I've worked my butt off to keep it in good shape. It's my lifeline. I use it to get to work, run errands, and well, just live my life. Now, let's talk about my family. I have a younger brother, Ryan, 19M, who still lives at home with my parents. And let me tell you, Ryan is the golden child. He's one of those people who just floats through life without a care in the world because my parents enable everything he does. He's never held down a steady job, spends most of his time playing video games, and somehow always has money to buy dumb stuff he doesn't need. My parents, they just shrug and say, oh, he's still young. He'll figure it out. Meanwhile, I've been the responsible one my whole life. You know the type. Straight A student, part-time jobs in high school, and now working full-time while still helping out my family whenever they need it. But apparently, being responsible just makes you the default scapegoat whenever anything goes wrong. Case in point, this entire situation. It all started last weekend. My mom texted me earlier in the week asking if I could come over for a family dinner. She loves these little get-togethers because they give her an excuse to cook way too much food and play perfect family for a few hours. I didn't really want to go. Ryan and I don't exactly get along, and my dad can be a bit much, but I figured, why not? I hadn't seen them in a while, and I thought maybe it'd be nice to catch up. So Saturday rolls around, and I drive over to my parents' house. I parked my Civic in the driveway, like always, grabbed the casserole dish I'd promised to bring, and headed inside. Everything seemed normal at first. My mom was in the kitchen, yelling at my dad for sampling the mashed potatoes before dinner was ready. Ryan was in the living room, glued to the TV, playing some first-person shooter game and yelling at his friends through his headset. Classic Ryan. We sat down for dinner, and honestly, it was nice. For about 20 minutes. My mom was telling me about her garden, my dad was ranting about the neighbor's new fence being too tall, and Ryan was actually eating instead of staring at his phone. But then, of course, Ryan had to ruin the vibe. He started making little comments about how it must be nice to have my own place and how not everyone has it so easy. I tried to brush it off because, honestly, I'm used to his passive-aggressive nonsense. I just said, well, you could have your own place too if you got a job, and went back to eating. That shut him up for a bit. After dinner, I helped my mom clean up, and we sat in the living room chatting for a while. I noticed that Ryan had disappeared, but I didn't think much of it. He's always sneaking off to do who knows what, and I wasn't about to waste my evening worrying about him. That turned out to be a huge mistake. A couple of hours later, I decided it was time to head home. I said goodbye to my parents, grabbed my keys from the counter where I'd left them, and walked outside, only to find that my car wasn't in the driveway. At first, I thought maybe I'd parked it somewhere else and just forgotten, but no, it was gone. My heart immediately sank. I ran back inside and said, hey, where's my car? My mom looked up from her knitting and said, oh, Ryan probably borrowed it. Don't overreact. Don't overreact? My car was gone. And she said it like I'd misplaced a pair of socks. I said, what do you mean he borrowed it? He didn't ask me. My dad chimed in with, well, he needed to run an errand. I'm sure he'll be back soon. Y'all, I was livid. I pulled out my phone and called Ryan, but of course he didn't answer. I called him 3 more times and still nothing. At this point, I was pacing around the house, trying not to completely lose it. My parents were acting like this was no big deal, saying things like, relax, it's just a car, and you're always so uptight about these things. Like, excuse me, this is my car, the one I worked hard to buy and maintain, and now it's just gone? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ryan called me back. Before I could even say anything, he said, oh, hey, what's up? What's up? I said, where is my car, Ryan? He paused for a second and then said, "Oh, yeah, about that. So I kind of traded it. Traded it." He said it so casually, like he just swapped out an old t-shirt or something. I could barely speak. I said, "What the hell are you talking about? You traded my car for what?" And this little weasel has the nerve to say, "It's not a big deal, okay? I traded it for a gaming console. It's a limited edition, super rare, probably worth more than the car anyway." Y'all, I thought I was going to pass out. A gaming console. He traded my 2015 Honda Civic for a freaking gaming console. I couldn't even process what I was hearing. I said, "Are you out of your mind? You stole my car and traded it for a console? Do you have any idea what you've done?" He just sighed and said, "Chill out, you're overreacting. It's not like you can't just get another car." At this point, I was shaking with rage. I hung up on him and turned to my parents, expecting them to back me up. But nope. My mom just sighed and said, "Oh, Ryan made a mistake. Don't be so hard on him." And my dad, he actually said, "Well, maybe if you weren't so uptight about your stuff, he wouldn't feel like he had to sneak around." Are you kidding me? My brother stole my car, traded it for a stupid gaming console, and now somehow I'm the bad guy for being upset? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said, "This isn't a mistake. This is theft. I'm calling the police." And my mom, oh my God, she started crying and said, "You wouldn't do that to your own brother, would you? He's young, he made a bad decision, but he doesn't deserve to have his life ruined over it." His life ruined? What about my life? My car is gone. I have no way to get to work, run errands, or do anything else, and they want me to just let it go because he's young? I couldn't even deal with them anymore. I grabbed my stuff, walked out, and drove home in my dad's car because there was no way I was leaving without a way to get around. Now I'm sitting here wondering what to do. Part of me wants to just go nuclear, call the police, file a report, and make Ryan face the consequences of his actions. But another part of me feels guilty because, yeah, he's my brother, and my parents are acting like this is going to destroy the family if I don't let it go. Reddit. What would you do? Am I the bad guy for wanting to hold him accountable, or should I just suck it up and let my family guilt me into silence? Because right now, I'm ready to block all of them and never look back. So after that nightmare of a phone call with Ryan, I was sitting in my dad's car outside their house, shaking with anger. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My brother had straight up stolen my car, traded it for a freaking gaming console, and acted like it was no big deal. And the worst part? My parents were treating it like I was the one overreacting. I drove home in silence, trying to figure out my next move. On the one hand, I knew I had to get my car back. On the other, I already knew that if I called the police, my family would make me the villain of the century. But, what else was I supposed to do? Let Ryan get away with it? Not a chance. The next morning, I decided to try one last time to handle this without getting the cops involved. I called Ryan again. No answer. I texted him, "Where is the car? I need it back now." About an hour later, he finally replied with, "Relax, I'm working on it." Working on it? That's when I realized he didn't even have a plan to fix this. He genuinely thought I was just going to let it slide. At this point, I was done playing nice. I texted back, "Either you tell me where the car is, or I'm filing a police report." That finally got his attention. He called me, acting all defensive, saying, "Why are you being so dramatic? It's not like the car's gone forever." I said, "Ryan, you traded it for a console. Unless you have $12,000 lying around to replace it, the car is gone. Where is it?" He sighed like I was inconveniencing him and finally admitted he traded it to some guy he met online. Apparently, this dude had posted about wanting to trade the console for a car, and Ryan thought it was a great idea. I asked for the guy's contact info, and Ryan said, "I'll have to check. I think his name was like Jake or something." Jake or something. Are you kidding me? I told Ryan, "You better find his info and you better do it fast." He said he'd call me back and hung up. Meanwhile, I called my parents to tell them what was going on. My mom answered, and before I could even say anything, she said, "Oh, sweetheart, don't be too hard on him. He feels really bad about what happened." I said, "Mom, feeling bad isn't going to get my car back. Do you even understand what he's done? This isn't some little mistake. This is grand theft." She sighed and said, "But he's your brother. Family forgives family. Can't you just work it out without making it a big deal? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said, Mom, if you're not going to hold him accountable, I will. When Ryan finally called me back, he gave me the guy's number and said, There. Are you happy now? Just don't make this worse, okay? I ignored him and immediately called the guy. Let's call him Jake. Jake sounded sketchy as hell from the start. When I told him who I was and why I was calling, he said, Oh yeah, the Civic. Nice car, but I'm not giving it back unless I get my console back. I said, the console doesn't belong to Ryan. He had no right to trade my car for it. Jake just laughed and said, Well, that's not my problem. A deal's a deal. Y'all, I was furious. I said, Fine, then I'll let the police sort it out. Jake immediately got defensive, saying, Hey, don't get the cops involved. I don't want any trouble. I said, Then you better figure out how to get my car back because I'm not playing around. After hanging up, I decided I had no choice but to file a police report. I called the non-emergency line and explained the situation. The officer I spoke to was super understanding, but he made it clear that things could get messy if I pursued charges. I said, I don't care how messy it gets. I just want my car back. Later that evening, my parents called me, and I already knew it wasn't going to go well. My mom started with, We heard you're filing a police report. Don't you think that's a little extreme? I said, No, I don't. Ryan stole my car and traded it for a gaming console. What do you expect me to do? Just let it go? My dad chimed in with, He's your brother. You're going to ruin his life over a car? A car? I lost it. I said, This isn't just a car. This is my transportation, my independence, and my hard work. Ryan doesn't get to just take that away because he wanted a stupid console. If you think I'm going to let this slide, you don't know me at all. My mom started crying, saying, You're tearing this family apart. I couldn't take it anymore. I said, No, Ryan is tearing this family apart. And if you keep enabling him, you're just as much to blame. Then I hung up. The police called me a couple of days later with an update. They'd tracked down Jake, and after some persuasion, he agreed to return the car in exchange for getting his console back. I told them I didn't care what it took, I just wanted my car. When I went to pick it up, I almost cried. The car was filthy, the bumper was scratched, and it smelled like cheap cologne and fast food. But at least it was back. As for Ryan, I haven't spoken to him since. My parents keep trying to guilt me into forgiving him, saying, He's learned his lesson, but I'm not buying it. He hasn't apologized, and I doubt he ever will. I'm seriously considering cutting them all off because I can't keep being the scapegoat for their dysfunction. Reddit, what would you do? Am I wrong for wanting accountability, or should I just let it go to keep the peace? Because right now, I'm done with all of them.